Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the second installment of this particular unit in the history of Jewish law and practice. The purpose of what we've been doing up till now and what we will be doing down the line with God's help is to be able to get a much more sophisticated, mature, and complex sense of how Jewish law works. I mean, everybody who lives within the framework of Jewish law, somewhere along the line has a sense of, well, do this and don't do that. But there is a very long process between the source of the do this and the do that to then the very specific expression that we do nowadays. And what we're trying to do is pick themes that have to do with the very holidays. So we did Hanukkah, and now we're doing Purim, and with the theme Megillah Esther. Now, last time we discussed the source of the mitzvah to read the Megillah. Today we're going to discuss what is the authority. Now, you may not appreciate exactly what I mean by that, but I'll explain it. You'll see it soon enough. And then next week, we'll discuss what exactly is the nature of the obligation, who's obligated, and that will then lead us up to the nature of women's obligation. Okay? So, though I advertise this as women's obligation reading the Megillah, it's a little bit of a bait and switch kind of thing. We will definitely discuss that. But I'm really interested in exploring all kinds of aspects of reading the Megillah because I really want to accomplish this goal of getting a much more sophisticated sense of how halacha works. That's what we're really trying to do, is understand the halachic system. Now, well, we pointed out last week that such a simple question about how do we know we're supposed to read the Megillah, unfortunately, is not so simple because you can't really turn to the book of Exodus, chapter 13, verse 5, where it says, thou shalt read the Megillah, right? And even if you look in the scroll of Esther, so there's really not precisely such a verse there at all of thou shalt read the Megillah. So we ended up saying last time is that it's associated with a verse where the Megillah says, V'hayamim ha'ela nizkarim v'na'asim, that these days in the future will be remembered and done. Now, we saw that as the source of the mitzvah in the context of a discussion in the Babylonian Talmud. What I want to show you today is how the Jerusalem Talmud, the Talmud Yerushalmi, has a much more succinct and straightforward, right to the point, cutting to the chase, addressing of that issue of what is the source for the mitzvah of reading the Megillah. Just so everybody appreciates, there's the Mishnah, there's the discussion of the Mishnah, which took place in the academies in Babylonia. Those discussions were edited, and that becomes the Babylonian Talmud. The discussions which took place in Eretz Israel, not in Jerusalem, took place in Eretz Israel, that they were also collected, and that's called the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. It's called Jerusalem Talmud. You know why? It has such a Purim connection. It's amazing the way everything connects together. You know, I'm sure you're familiar with this idea. We touched on this the first session, and that is that there really are 2 days of Purim, and then it turns out because the 2 days is 5 days, and I think two-thirds of the 500 people here for the listening audience were at that class, I believe. And so those 2 days are the 14th and 15th of Adar, and the 15th of Adar is called Shushan Purim, right? Everybody knows this. And the halacha is that a city which is like Shushan celebrates on the 15th, just like they celebrated on the 15th. Okay, so Shushan happens to be a walled city. So we basically should say that any city which is a walled city, contemporaneous with Shushan being a walled city, so should celebrate on the 15th. The only problem is that Jerusalem did not have a wall when the Purim story happened because the wall had been destroyed. So out of honoring Jerusalem, we made a kind of a not very intuitive decision, and that is, instead of connecting the definition of a walled city to Shushan, which is where the whole thing comes from, we'll connect it to Jericho. Okay, so any city that had a wall in it when the Jewish people entered into Eretz Israel, and there used to be a wall around Jericho, but the wall came tumbling down. So, and Jerusalem had a wall at that time too. Okay, so this notion of giving honor to Jerusalem is really an amazing thing. If people understood how deep our primal our connection is with Jerusalem and Eretz Israel, like it would change the political reality, maybe. In any case, that's why it's called Talmud Yerushalmi, to honor Yerushalayim, to honor the holy city of Jerusalem, even though it was not composed there. So the Talmud Yerushalmi, let's take a look what it says here. Rabbi Chabo Rav Huna b'Shem Rav. So it gives an attribution to these particular rabbis. V'hayamim ha'elu nizkarim v'na'asim. These days will be remembered and done. And then the Talmud Yerushalmi cuts right to the chase. Nizkarim, they'll be remembered. How so? B'kriyah, by reading. V'na'asim, and how are they done? Right, because it says these days will be remembered and done. B'su'udah, having a party. Okay, so that's, wow, right? Cut to the chase. If I would have learned this the first session, I would have less to say. You know, like, okay, but put me out of business, I have to get an honest job. Okay? So the source of the mitzvah is Nizkarim v'Na'asim. Now, I want to point out that this interpretation of these days will be Nizkarim, remembered, and when the Talmud Yerushalmi says through reading the Megillah, there is a consistency throughout the system of halacha of the notion of lizkor, to remember, being associated with reading from scripture, reading from Tanakh. Can anybody of the 500 people here give me examples of that, where the Torah says something about afresh, to remember, and we fulfill that through recitation? Okay, interesting. So Yizkor, wow. So Yizkor is actually, I was referring to passages in the Tanakh, right? So it is certainly interesting. It's a very good point. I mean, it's not really what I was looking for, but it happens to make the point. So one of our Talmudic geniuses here, and since this is going down for posterity, she doesn't mind her lack of anonymity. Her name is Marissa Rubin. And if you have any questions, you can direct them to UC Davis. She's a Nobel Prize winner in PR. So in any case, the it's, you know, the idea of Yizkor is to remember. So you know what we could do? We could sit around and remember. I don't know, like on the holidays, we'll all close our eyes. That'd be like, nowadays, it'd be very fashionable. Let's remember. But we don't. We actually, what do we do in Yizkor? We recite. We recite a passage, okay? But how about biblical examples of that? Can anybody think of biblical examples of that? Okay, so it happens to be, everybody knows there's two editions of the Ten Commandments, okay? So one of them says, Zachor Yom Shabbat, remember Shabbat. The other one says, Shamor, you should observe. So you know how we fulfill the mitzvah of Zachor, to remember? We make Kiddush, we make Kiddush. We recite. Zachor means to recite. I'll give you another example. It's actually tied to Purim in a certain sense. One of our favorite biblical anti-heroes that we'd like to wipe out. What nation is that? Amalek. What does the Torah say?
Don't forget to remember to wipe out.
Yeah, now don't ask me about that. I won't be able to sleep at night. But we're supposed to remember Amalek. How to remember Amalek? We chant the passage in the Torah, which contains that particular passage. So this notion of Zachor being associated with chanting, right, or reciting out loud, that's consistent. So this is not surprising whatsoever. Fine. I'm going to ask you a simple question, but first I need a stiff drink. L'chaim. Okay. By the way, if anybody like a stiff drink, feel at home. Okay. Generally speaking, we divide up mitzvot into deraita and derabanan, Torah obligations and rabbinic obligations. So what is this mitzvah, right? It says these days are supposed to be remembered. From there we learn Mikra Megillah, the mitzvah to read the Megillah. Is that a mitzvah from the Torah or from the rabbis? What would you say?
Rabbinic.
Rabbinic. And Dr. Rubin, why?
Because it's not in the Torah.
Okay, so I'd say that is a very sane and not surprisingly to the point answer. It's not in the Torah, so obviously it's rabbinic. That's what you would think. Okay, so put on your seatbelts. Okay, let's look at the Rambam. The Rambam, in his great law code, the Mishneh Torah, says the following. Everybody see where we are in the source sheets? Kriyat HaMegillah Bizmana. The reading of the Megillah at its proper time. Mitzvah taseh. It's a positive mitzvah. It's a do, right? Rather than a don't. Midivrei sofrim. And what's its source of authority? From the words of the sofrim. Now, sofrim, well, how do we translate the word sofrim? So a sofer really is a scribe. Comes with the word sefer. Very good. Sefer is a book. Sofer is someone who, right. What do you call a ritual scribe? Now, a sofer. And there are people whose last name is Sofer. Actually, very prominent in Berkeley. Did you know? Yeah. Okay. So it's a pos mitzvah from Divrei Sofrim, from the words of the Sofrim. Okay. Hear this translation here, which is not my translation. I stole this from a website. Okay. So it translated is ordained by the rabbis. Okay. The typical Talmudic word for something that comes from the rabbis is an Aramaic expression. Help me out. We used it just a second ago. For the rabbis.
Oh,
Rabbanan. Good. To Rabbanan. Okay. So the Rambam uses this word Divrei Sofrim. Now, so I'm not going to lose sleep right now, but I will in a second, over the fact he doesn't use the term Rabbanan. You know why? What language is Rabbanan? What language is Rabbanan? It's Aramaic, right? D. Whenever you hear a D, it's an Aramaic. It means of or that. So D, it's of Rabbanan. No, Rav, right? So Rabbanan means our rabbis. From our rabbis or of our rabbis. Okay, so that's the phrase. The Rambam did an amazing thing. Even though he's codifying the entire Talmud, as a matter of fact, he's codifying everything, all the law, right? Even laws that aren't operative anymore, laws of sacrifice and everything. He writes the entire thing, even though the sources are in Aramaic in the Talmud. I'm not sure there's any Aramaic in the entire Mishneh Torah. There probably is, right? Very little. He writes it in beautiful Mishnaic Hebrew, unbelievable. Beautiful, beautiful, almost like modern Hebrew. It's very easy to read. Okay? So those of you who like practicing your Hebrew reading, learn the Mishneh Torah. Okay? So maybe he doesn't use Rabbanan and he just translates into it of a kind of a nice Hebrew phrase, Divrei Sofrim, and that phrase does appear in the Talmud itself, Divrei Sofrim. Okay, I'm not losing sleep right now, but ready for this? This is a bombshell. V'hadvarim yaduim shehi takanat devim, and it's known that it is a takana. Does anybody know what takana is? An enactment. It's an enactment. This reading of the Megillah. Of whom? The Nevi'im. We just had a whole shiur about prophecy. The prophets. So, wait a second. If he just wanted to say, it's Midivrei Sofrim, it's rabbinic, he just should have said, it's a mitzvah taseh, it's a positive mitzvah, Midivrei Sofrim, from the Sofrim. Then he says, and it's well known that this comes from an enactment of the prophets. Huh? What is that doing there? Okay. Well, So that would be an answer to the next question I want to ask. Well, what prophets are we talking about? Now, that leads into kind of when prophecy ended. We touched a little bit on Shabbat on this question. So there are some suggestions that Megillat Esther, I think even alluded to this as a time with our class, that Megillat Esther could be seen, or that period in history is, that's it, the final cessation of prophecy, and Esther and Mordechai are prophets. Okay, that's a possible understanding, sort of historically, spiritually, of what's going on. So this enactment to read the Megillah, which took place at that time of the story, is an enactment of presumably Esther and Mordechai, and that's called a Takanat Nevi'im. So now I have a question. I only know of two categories: a mitzvah from the Torah, a mitzvah from the rabbis. What is the status of a Takanat Nevi'im, an enactment coming from the prophets? Is that like another way of saying from the Torah, even though it's not from the Torah? Or is it another way of saying it's from the rabbis? It just happens to be that the rabbis had like a hobby of being prophets at the same time.
Seems like it gives more credibility than to just the rabbis. I mean,
Does seem like it.
Solidifying your argument or having your argument. It wasn't just like arbitrary that the rabbis, there was actually, something that's not disputable, that's beyond them.
Yeah, it does have an umph to it. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, so the Rambam says, "V'hadarim yiduim," like it's well known, right? That it is Takanat Nevi'im, an enactment of the prophets. So, Mercer, if I understand you properly, you're saying it's basically rabbinic, but to give it a kind of more of an oomph, it's formulated as being, since it's sort of the end of the prophetic era, so it's formulated in that term to give like an extra little bit of authority. So let me just ask you, go ahead, Margaret.
Sorry.
No, it's all right, you have to apologize.
You said reenactment. So reenactment means...
Did I say reenactment?
Isn't that what you said that word meant?
No, enactment.
Oh,
enactment. Yeah, enactment. Yeah, I mean, I am capable of not remembering what I said, but yeah, enactment. Okay, fine.
So that's different.
So now I want to show you something surprising, and let's see if we can handle this. Tara, can you handle this?
You were saying
Okay. Let's learn a law in Shulchan Aruch. Now, in order to appreciate this law, we have to have a little introduction. In mourning, the laws of mourning, there are various stages. The first stage in the laws of mourning is the stage between death and burial. And a person who's in that stage of mourning is called an onen, okay, aninut, that's the name of that period. And a person who is in that period has actually a very strange halachic status, okay? Some things maybe are not so surprising. They're not supposed to engage in pleasures. Okay, so no meat or wine during that period, which is not the case, by the way, in Shiva. Like, people sometimes confuse that. After the burial, the Talmud even says you should drink wine. A lot of it even starts to quantify it, because the Talmud says it helps you deal with your grief. I'm not sure everybody would agree with that, but so says the Talmud. Okay, we generally speaking don't advocate getting drunk out of your mind to forget your grief during Shiva. Okay, but this period of aninut, the period between the death and the burial, so one is not allowed to eat meat or drink wine. What's, by the way, a strange element of this is that person is no longer obligated to observe the positive mitzvot. That is really weird. They don't. If it's a man, don't put on tefillin, don't daven. They still don't do the prohibition. They can't say, "Ooh, I'm on this period of aninut." Like I'm not obligated in the mitzvot. I'll go eat a cheeseburger. That's right. They're obligated in the prohibitions, but none of the positive mitzvot. For that reason, there's an incredible thing. It can't be counted in a minyan. We had this here. We had a death in the community, And the son came to minyan. You can't count him in a minyan because since he's not obligated to daven.
It's like the time bound. I mean, it's like related, at least in my mind, it's related to women and time bound mitzvot.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's like your time is not your own. Like you either have.
Oh, beautiful! Wow! That is amazing. Not surprising. So that's exactly what the Talmud says. The reason that we release this person of all of his positive obligations is because meto mutal lefanav, the dead person is laying in front of him. He has to bury him. It's not like today where you're like, with one phone call and for $19.99, we will take care of all arrangements from, A to Z. But in ancient times, you have to get involved, and therefore the person is freed from other. This is the most pressing need, is to make sure that there's a proper burial and he's freed of all obligations. That's why, by the way, let's say that there was a situation where the onain was not able at all to deal with burial. Let's say the police confiscated the body for some reason. There was a crime, and burial hasn't taken place yet, and you can't do anything. The police are doing investigation. The body is being kept. You're obligated in the mitzvot because you can't do anything anyway, right? Okay, so an onain is not allowed to eat meat or drink wine, and they are free of the mitzvot. Okay, now let's learn a halacha on Shulchan Aruch. Yesh mi she'omer she'onain mutar b'asar v'yain. Some people say that if an onain, what would happen? You see where we are, Tara? What would happen if someone became an onain on Purim? God forbid, right? Person's close relative, passed away, and right before Purim. Now it's Purim. Burial hasn't happened yet. Normally, they can't eat meat or drink wine, right? Now, the Shulchan Aruch says that some people say that he can do it now. So why would there be even an issue, help me out here, of allowing him to have meat and drink wine? Like, what's that have to do with anything related to Purim?
Because it's a positive commandment to feast.
Yeah. Remember, we just learned from the Talmud Yerushalmi. These days are Nizkarim v'Nasim. They're remembered through the reading of Megillah, and Nasim through the Seudah, by having a big party at Ki. So we're saying here that Purim has pushed aside what would have normally have been the prohibition on eating meat and drinking wine. How some of Purim trumped the the prohibition on meat and wine. I need another stiff drink.
I just have to call your attention to something.
Yes.
Because the end of that little phrase is, for their obligations from the prophets, Nevi'im, which are like the Torah.
Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle.
Probably.
That's exactly what we're supposed to look at. Thank you. Okay, let's read that. Thank you, Tara. So now it goes on and explains the reasoning. This is the author of the Shulchan Aruch speaking in the Shulchan Aruch. Delo ati asay diachid avelud v'dachi asay derabim de'oraita lismot b'purim. Because we wouldn't say that the positive obligation of an individual with regards to mourning is going to push aside the positive public obligation, which is de'oraita. There's that famous Aramaic phrase from the Torah, lismoch b'purim, to rejoice on Purim. So right away you say, oh my bubby, what's he talking about here? Since when is there a de'oraita, a Torah obligation to party on Purim? So he heard that question and he answers, the divrei Kabbalah ninhu, because the obligations of Purim are divrei Kabbalah. Whoa, let's just slow down. So divrei, matters of Kabbalah. Now, we're going to have to define a phrase. When you find this phrase, Kabbalah, Divrei Kabbalah, in rabbinic literature, like we're learning, this has no classes about that, it doesn't mean what Madonna thinks it means. Because Madonna thinks Kabbalah means Kabbalah, mysticism. Kabbalah is a technical term used in the Talmud to refer to the prophets, Nevi'im. Whenever you have an obligation which is derived from the prophets, it's called Divrei Kabbalah. Now, hang on one second. Where did we hear that the mitzvah reading Megillah is an enactment from the prophets? Who said that? The Rambam. Wow. And we asked ourselves, what does he mean by that? Is it like a kind of, it's rabbinic, because he also used the word Divrei Sofrim, but he kind of wanted to give it an extra oomph. Well, that seems reasonable. But the Shulchan Aruch, when he seems to be paraphrasing the idea of the Rambam and applying it to the laws of mourning, says that, well, you know why I say it's deraita? And the deraita obligation, the Torah obligation to rejoice on Purim trumps the prohibition of eating meat and wine, right? The obligations of aninut. Because the words of Kabbalah, the prophetic obligations, shehem kedivrei Torah, they're like the Torah. They're like the words of Torah. Okay, so I just want to see if we can understand that phrase. In what way is something that's an enactment from the prophets, not reenactment, but an enactment from the prophets, how is that like divrei Torah, like something from the Torah itself? In what sense?
That's a good question, because you can't add and you can't take away. So what is
that? That is a good question. We have this idea of not adding to the Torah. I think I need another stiff drink. That's a good question. So in what way is the enactment of the prophets divrei Torah? Notwithstanding your question, we're going to put that aside for now. That is a good question, but put aside for now. In what way is it like the words of the Torah? Yes, Torah.
Because aren't the prophets speaking from God?
Okay, beautiful. You know, why is it that we have this kind of categorization of D'oraita and D'Rabbanan? Like, who cares? Like, you know, if it's something you're supposed to do, so we'll do it. I mean, like, what do I care? What do I care who commanded me? Well, we do care. Because it has a lot of implications. Because if God tells me to do something, whoa, that's really heavy duty. If the rabbis tell me to do something, I also should do it. Even God wants me to do what the rabbis say. God told me that this morning. Yeah, but nobody else seems to know. But in any case, but if the rabbis tell me, right, then that's also part of halakha, but maybe we can take it with a little bit more flexibility. So there are very famous examples of how it plays out when something is either d'oraita or d'Rabbanan. I'll give you, because does anybody know like famous examples of how it really matters whether something is d'oraita or d'Rabbanan? Very specific, not just like general, like I said now. Okay, I'll give you an example. What would happen if I'm not sure I did a mitzvah? You know, speaking of wine, I drank too much. I can't remember if I did a mitzvah. So there's a very simple principle. If it's from the Torah, we're strict. Do the mitzvah, even though you think you may have done it, but you're not sure. That's called safek, a doubt. So if it's a safek from the Torah, we are machmir, we're strict and we do it. Now, if it's from the rabbis, if there's a safek, a doubt whether you did it or not, you don't have to do it. So let's get down to business here. You know what happened? Whoa. Purim had one too many. One too many Starbucks. And you know what? I can't even remember where I was that morning. Okay. Now, I was supposed to be in Shul, right, hearing the Megillah. But for the life of me, I'm not sure where I was. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure where I am right now. But it's Purim, that I know. And I heard that there's a late Megillah reading. Like in Alon Shvut, you could hear the Megillah a whole bunch of times. Okay. Well, if the Megillah is midivrei sofrim or midarabanan, we use the more typical term for the rabbis, what's the halacha?
You already heard it. I mean, you assume you.
It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I'm in doubt, so it doesn't matter. I don't have to go running around looking for a Megillah reading. Okay? If it's from the Torah, then I have to be strict and I have to go chase down someone to read the Megillah for me who didn't drink as much as I did. Okay? So let me ask the Shulchan Aruch. You are the author of the Shulchan Aruch. So Rabbi Yosef Karo in this room, I forgot to read the Megillah. Or no, I'm sorry. I'm not sure whether I read the Megillah. Right? What's the, Rabbi Yosef Karo? What's the halacha? Right? You wrote this, I know. So
You need to hear it. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You need to hear it.
It sounds like you need to
The
hear
Torah
it.
would be-
He says explicitly, Kedivrei Torah.
Mhm.
And not only that, but he says it trumps a derabanan. It trumps a normal rabbinic obligation, like the idea of not eating meat and wine is part of the obligations of aninut, which are only rabbinic. So it seems to not be a normal rabbinic, and it's like divrei Torah. I think I have to be strict. Okay. Not so fast, Kowalski. Nothing is simple. Nothing is simple. Okay. How many mitzvot are there in the Torah?
17 more words.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because people much smarter than me can count.
So you're absolutely maybe wrong.
That'll
Okay.
be the first time.
Okay. So here's the problem. There's a passage in the Talmud that says there's 613 mitzvot. There's only one problem. It doesn't say what they are. Now, if you're to go through the Torah and count every time it says do this and don't do that, you know what's going to happen?
You can do a lot more.
A lot more than 613. Okay? So there are a bunch of rabbis in the Middle Ages, didn't happen until the Middle Ages, interestingly enough, that devoted a lot of time to trying to figure out, well, what are those 613 mitzvot? So since there are more times in the Torah that say do this or don't do that than 613, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have some kind of criteria by which you can categorize what do we consider to be, what do you need to get into the club of 613? Okay?
Or which ones might be the same.
Good. You could say some are really, they're like subsets of the other, right? So precisely. So the Rambam, he wrote a book called Sefer Mitzvot, the Book of Mitzvot. And you know what he does in that Sefer Mitzvot? He enumerates the 613 mitzvot. But he is the Rambam. He is so scientific, systematic. He doesn't just list the 613 mitzvot. He has a lengthy introduction in which he sets down all the principles, all the criteria by which he judges whether a mitzvah belongs in the 613 mitzvot or not. So I want to read with you a little bit of his first principle. He calls them shorashim. What's a shorash? Anybody know? A root. Excellent. A root. So these are the roots, right? These are the principles which allow me to figure out whether I'm going to include a mitzvah in the 613 or not. Everybody see who we are? Hashorish Rishon. I don't have a translation for this. You just have to bear along with me. Hashorish Rishon she'en roi limnot bichlal hazeh mitzvot she'en midrabanan. The first root is it would not be fit to count in the 613 mitzvot which are midrabanan, which are only rabbinic. That makes sense. And then he says da, which means yes in Russian. But here it means da,
To know?
no, very good. No. כי זה העניין לא היה ראוי לעורר עליו לביאורו, כי אחר שהיה לשון התלמוד 613 מצוות, נאמרו לו למשה בסיני, איך נאמר בדבר שהוא מדרבנן שהוא בכלל המניין. He says, this should be a no-brainer. Because since the Talmud says there's 613 mitzvot which were given to Moshe at Sinai, how can anybody possibly think that a rabbinic enactment is going to be included in the 613? But guess what? Some of the rabbis who made collections of the 613 included me, the Rabbanan, of the 613. But he says, it should be a no-brainer, you don't do that. So now he's going to tell you why people would ever think that a Rabbanan belongs in the 613. So he explains. I decided to address this because a lot of people made a big mistake. Umanu nir Chanukah umikra Megillah bichlal mitzvot aseh. And they counted Chanukah and reading the Megillah as being positive mitzvot from the Torah. Now, he used a very important word in introducing this. He said, these, because many people, ta'u, like ta'ut. Anybody know that word in Hebrew? Made a mistake.
Say again.
Mistake, an error. There are many people who erred, who made a mistake saying that Chanukah, lighting a Chanukah candle, and Mikra Megillah are mitzvot from the Torah. They're deraita. And they're only derabanan. Well, now I am super confused. Because what did we want to say about how the Rambam relates to the obligation to read the Megillah? That it's a kind of, we'll call it a quasi-deoraita. It's a quasi-mitzvah. He used this word, it comes from the prophet. He could have just said, it's from the rabbis and that's it. He didn't. And then the Shulchan Aruch, presumably based upon the Rambam, took that idea and explicitly calls it deoraita. He says it's like, k'divrei Torah. And how it pushes aside rabbinic obligations like the obligation to be an onay, right? This kind of mourning period before burial. So it's not just a Rabbanan. So it's sort of like a, but the Rambam here explicitly says, don't think that the reading of Megillah is a mitzvah from the Torah. Okay, so let's go on just a little bit more, and he gives some more examples. Let's just skip a little bit here. Hang on. Yeah, skip to the very last sentence on that page. You know, the Rambam can be a little snide. Okay? So he says the following. Omnam heyot Moshe ne'emar lo b'Sinai she yitzavenu ki ksheyihyeh b'achrit mamlachto V'yikret lanu am hayavanim kach v'kach yitcharev lanu shenadlik ner Chanukah hinei eini ro'eh she'echad yidameh o sheyalehu b'machshavto. He says the following. There are medieval authorities that counted reading the Megillah as one of the 613 mitzvot. So he said the following. Remember, the Talmud actually says 613 mitzvot were given to Moshe at Har Sinai. That's the language. So he says, if you think that the reading of the Megillah is an obligation from the Torah, you know what you're going to have to come up with? You're going to have to assume the following. God said to Moshe, hey, I got some inside information. In the future, there's going to be a big war between the big bad Greeks and the Jews, and there's, that's the wrong holiday. Sorry, Hanukkah. Purim. Okay, there's going to be, I knew it was a big bad somebody. Big bad Persians. Okay. And someone named Esther and Mordechai, blah, blah, blah. And when that happens, so I want you to right now tell everybody that when it happens, there's an obligation to read the Megillah. So I'm telling you right now, when those circumstances take place. So if you say something like that, then it's a Torah obligation to read the Megillah. But God had to give it in advance to Moshe at Har Sinai. So you know what he says about that kind of proposition? He says, I can't imagine anybody thinking such a thing. That would, or anybody that would enter into their mind. I was like, what a ridiculous kind of theory, right? That's what he says. It's a little bit strong. Okay. So why did they think that it's from the Torah? So he says, maybe they're not totally insane. You know what misled them? What misled them was the next phrase. Umashe yira eli sheheviam elzeh hiyotinu mevarchim aleinu advrim asher kishanu tzivanu amikra Megillah. You know why? Because these Jews who included it in the 613 mitzvot, before they read the Megillah, they make a bracha, like we all do. Asher kishanu tzivanu. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, who has commanded us with his commandments, sanctified us with the commandments, and commanded us to read the Megillah. Think of those words. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, right? Who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to read the Megillah. What did we just say? That this mitzvah we're about to do is a commandment from God. So that's what the Rambam says. Since they make this bracha, they thought, I guess it's from God. Yes?
Are there any rabbinic commandments that take that formulation where we?
100%. That's the next point in the Rambam. So the Rambam says, oh my God, he says, or I should say my bubby, my son-in-law, Rahuri, he doesn't like when I say, oh my God. He's very pious. He said I should say, oh my bubby. Oh my bubby. You know how many rabbinic obligations we do? You know something? Hey, let's eat a pastrami sandwich. Is that okay? After the class. Okay? So if someone else brings the pastrami, we can do that. What are we going to do before we eat that sandwich? We're going to wash our hands, the Tilat Yadayim. And when we wash our hands, we're going to say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam tzivanu Tilat Yadayim. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with commandments, commanded us to do the Tilat Yadayim. Guess what? Nobody in the world thinks that washing your hands before eating bread is a mitzvah Torah. Nobody in the world. Not even the rabbis who said reading the Megillah would claim that that's a mitzvah from the Torah. As a matter of fact, if you claim that every single mitzvah that we do, that we make a bracha on like that, is part of the 613 mitzvot, you know how many mitzvot we're going to have? A Google's worth. That big. Okay? So the Rambam just says they were led astray because of the bracha, but it makes no sense because then you have to include all the others. So so he says they're wrong. They're wrong. Okay. So what is it? Now watch this. Skip all the way to the end of that. It says the following. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines to the bottom. It is the fourth word from the end. There's a period and it says ukvar hitba'er. It's the fourth line from the bottom. Go to the left. And there's a period that says ukvar hitba'er. He says it's already been clarified. Does anybody see where we are? The first word in the line is mitzvah. Mitzvah lishmoa. It's right at the end of that paragraph. Okay, just go to the left. Ukvar hitba'er. It's already been explained. Shekol mashu tiknu nevi'im. Everything that the prophets enacted. Ooh, I'm starting to get happy because I want to know what the Rambam means. What does he mean when he says it's an enactment of the prophets? What exactly is the status of that kind of thing? So that enactment of the prophets, Aleihim Hashalom, peace be upon them, Sha'amdu Achar Moshe Rabbeinu, who existed after Moshe Rabbeinu, who Gam Ken Midirabanan. It's just Midirabanan. Oh no, this is not good. Because I wanted to say, based upon Marissa, that it's a kind of Dirabanan on steroids. Right? But he just says, no, an enactment for the prophets is Midirabanan. The reason that really bothers me is because of the way the Shulchan Aruch paraphrased one of the assumptions of the Rambam by saying, you know, it's from the prophets and therefore it's like a deraita, it's like from the Torah, and therefore it pushes aside the normal rabbinic laws of a mourning.
It's not even so disturbing that the Shulchan Aruch extrapolated on it. It's more disturbing that the Rambam included it.
Wait, I didn't follow your point.
It's more disturbing that the Rambam put the initial phrase in. Like, once somebody says it, then you can see why somebody would extrapolate it.
Okay, right. In other words, Mr. Rambam, why'd you create, look what you did. You said too much, and it made a mess out of everything. Is you would have just stopped by saying it's from Divrei Sofrim, from the rabbis, so then there'd be no confusion. But when you said it's Divrei Sofrim, and everybody knows it's Mitakanat Nevi'im, it's from the enactment of the prophets, that opened up a Pandora's box. So centuries later, along comes the author of the Shulchan Aruch and says, ooh, it's not just a normal Divrei Sofrim, it's Takanat Nevi'im, it's from enactment for the prophets. There's a kind of prophetic source. As Tara mentioned before, what makes a deraita is it's God speaking to us. So if a prophet tells you to do something, that's God speaking to us. So why not call it a deraita? Which seems to be what the Shulchan Aruch is doing. But only problem is the Rambam, who's the one who got us in trouble in the first place, explicitly says it's the Rabbanan. Oh my. Oh my. So I'm going to try to solve this problem. Are you ready? I want to take a look at a halacha totally irrelevant to everything we're talking about. But you'll see. Let's talk about getting married. Okay. Now, getting married is a legal act in halacha. There are three ways of creating that state of being married. Does anybody know what they are?
Saying the sentence.
Good. Behold, you are betrothed to me. But it's not just the saying of the sentence. That won't do it.
Putting the ring.
Good. Now, it doesn't need to be a ring. It could be anything of value.
You acquire.
Okay. Okay. So, now there's two other ways of doing it too. We don't do the other two ways.
Consummating with two witnesses.
Good. If you actually were just to have relations, but before you do it, you have to say, you should know we are doing this for the sake of marriage. It's not just one night stand. Okay. There's a third way to do it, and that's a document. You could write on a piece of paper if you wanted to. You say, behold, through this document, through the star in Hebrew, you're betrothed to me. Here, you mind holding this? And then voila. Okay? Let's read the Rambam. Everybody see the next source here? Rambam, Hilchot Ishut. So it's not in translation, but it's pretty easy. A woman becomes married through one of three ways: kesef, shtar, and bia. The three things I just mentioned before. Kesef, that means to give her an item of value. Nowadays, custom to give a ring, but it doesn't have to be a ring. You can give a Mercedes-Benz too. Shtar, the document, or bia, through marital intimacy. Okay. Now he says something interesting. The bia ubishtar mina Torah. The fact that you can create that state of marital union through intimacy or through a document, that comes from the Torah. We know that from the Torah. Don't ask me where it says in the Torah. That's not important for our purposes. Ubekesef, the fact that you can do it through giving a ring, like this we do it nowadays, Divrei Sofrim. That comes from Divrei Sofrim. Ooh, I like that expression, Divrei Sofrim. The words of the rabbis, right? So that's our favorite phrase, right? So the whole world goes crazy about this Rambam. You know why? Because the Talmud says, you know how we know that a woman could become married by giving her a huge diamond ring, or let's not use a diamond, big gold band, okay? You know, we know that. It's based, and it derives it in a kind of a typical Talmudic way by the fact that when the Torah describes marriage, it says ki kach ish isha, when a man take a woman. Okay. Then it says that word taking, I've seen it used in the context of giving someone an item of value. When Abraham wanted to get the burial chamber for his wife Sarah, he used that same verb. He gave an item of value, and then he got the burial chamber. So just like in the context of the cave changing its status through giving an item of value. And the word lokeach kicha is used in that context. So too, since the Torah also says when a man take the same verb, a woman, let's assume that that can happen through the same type of act, giving an item of value. That in Hebrew is called a gezerah shavah. You take a word, which is the same word used in two different places, and we say, just like over there it means something, so too it means it over here too. Okay, fine. Well, wait a second. So if I were to ask you, based upon information which is explicitly in the Talmud, from where do we know that you can get married by giving a woman a big, fat gold ring? How do we know that? Not complicated, just with one word. We know it from the Torah. We know it from the Torah. So now I am very perplexed. You know why I'm perplexed? Because what did the Rambam just say? There are 3 ways of getting married. 2 of the 3 are from the Torah, and one of them is divrei sofrim. The Rambam didn't read the Talmud. It's derived from the Torah, from the fact that the word lokeach means X over there, so it means X over here too. Why is it called divrei sofrim? Guess what? The author of the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, he didn't just write the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote a commentary in the Rambam too. And he calls it the Kesef Mishneh. That's the name of his commentary in the Rambam. And he says something pretty interesting in there. He says the following. I think let's read it just a few words. You ever see where it says Kesef Mishneh? This is Rabbi Yosef Karo, same person, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, who said that the reading of Megillah is like from the Torah, right? He quotes the Rambam. He says, this Rambam is really difficult. How can he say that getting married through giving an item of value is only from divrei sofrim? It's derived from the fact that kicha appears in one place in the Torah, appears in another place in the Torah with regards to marriage. And in the first place, it has to do with giving an item of value. And so here too, item of value. Havi Devar Torah. It's from the Torah. How can he say it's divrei sofrim? So he says, I saw that some people tried to solve the problem. A great rabbi, he says, said the Rambam, it's a mistake. It's a mistake in the Rambam. And that it really should say they're all 3 from the Torah. The fact that it says only from divrei sofrim, it's a mistake. The Rambam himself realized it was a mistake and he fixed it. So it even says that he saw that the son of the Rambam said the same thing. That's pretty good testimony. The son of Rambam said, my father didn't mean it. They're all from the Torah. So it's pretty amazing, a little bit of chutzpahdik, in my opinion. I say that with humility. So Rabbi Yosef Karo says, you know what? I don't believe it. The Rambam, when he said it's from divrei sofrim, he meant it. It wasn't a mistake. And he actually brings some proofs, but I didn't quote the proofs here. So wait a second. So I don't understand. How could it be divrei sofrim? It's from the Torah.
Did you tell us, and I just forgot, which of the 3 ways was not from the Torah?
Yeah, giving an item of value. Kesef.
Oh, okay.
It's called kesef. Okay? So he says, I'm going to tell you why the Rambam calls it divrei sofrim. So now look at the last sentence in the Kesef Mishnah. Divrei sofrim kara ledavar shu mideraita, ela she'eno mefurash b'Torah. Divrei sofrim can include something which is actually from the Torah, but it's not explicit at all. The karina le divrei sofrim, we call it divrei sofrim. Klomar davar she'ilulei shekibu sofrim perusho lo hayinu mevinim oto kach. It's because if it weren't for the sofrim, we'd never understand it that way, right? You would never think that, it uses a verb over there when Abraham got this burial place for his wife. And the same verb appears in the Torah, in the context of getting married. So just like over there, an item of value was exchanged, so too by marriage, you can see, I mean, nobody in this room would ever like do some kind of like thing like that. That's why it's called Divrei Sofrim. Because if it wasn't for the fact that the rabbis had such a tradition, that's what the words mean, we would never know this is what the Torah means. So really it's from the Torah, but we call it Divrei Sofrim because without the Sofrim, we wouldn't understand the passage that way. Now, based upon this, I'd like to make the following suggestion. Could it be that Divrei Sofrim is a kind of term which is used that encompasses within it a whole expanse of obligations that are anything beyond an explicit mitzvah in the Torah? Because this is a good example of it, right? The Kesef Mishnah is explaining that because it's not explicit in the Torah, the Rambam calls it Divrei Sofrim, even though it has the authority of Torah behind it. So could it be that at least the Kesef Mishnah felt that whenever you see this term Divrei Sofrim used by the Rambam, so it means that it can mean a lot of different things, but it's not just a way of saying it's from the rabbis. Really, what it's saying, according to this, it's what Marissa said a long time ago. But if I would have stopped then, I wouldn't have a class to say, right? It can be something that is really from the Torah, but not explicit, so it's called Divrei Sofrim. Or perhaps it could be something which is from the prophets, so it's not really from the Torah at all. It's not deraita. But it's not, at the same time, just a plain derabanan. Or to put it kind of facetiously, it's a kind of derabanan on steroids. And that's at least how Rabbi Yosef Karo understood it. And that's why he said that if a derabanan on steroids coming from the prophets is included in this big thing called Divrei Sofrim, even though it's, if you had to like take a stand, it's more derabanan than deraita, right? That's what it says. It's derabanan but on steroids. It's not a deraita.
You said it's more derabanan?
Yes, it's a derabanan on steroids rather than an anemic deraita.
So people pass it that way.
That's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins, okay? And so therefore, that's why he passes the way he does in terms of pushing aside the laws on it. Okay, so now just to the bottom line. So what did we just learn today? We just learned that this mitzvah of Megillah has a really fascinating status because it's a kind of transitional stage in the history of halakha. Because there is deraita, mitzvah within the Torah, and there are clearly rabbinic enactments, but at the very end of the prophetic era, there was legislation, at least in the case of Mikra Megillah, which kind of has a kind of not synthetic, not the word I'm looking for. Putting two things together.
Synthesize?
Yeah, not synthetic, I don't know.
Synthesize?
I don't know what I'm looking for. It's a word I thought it has some. Anyway, it's a kind of two-headed monster, right? It kind of has. It's not a deraita, but it's not fully a derabanan because it's at the end of the prophetic period. Has this kind of like divine element in it, but at the same time, it's not deraita really. That's only stuff that comes from the Torah itself, but it's something more than just a plain derabanan. Okay, and so that explains the approach of the Shulchan Aruch in this, and as we go on next week, we'll see that what emerges is that this is a big mitzvah. Right? That's the bottom line, right? It's not just a rabbinic enactment. It's a kind of a prophetic enactment which has a halachic status which reflects that. Okay, we'll pause here and we'll go on next week. And next week we'll actually discuss how this now blends into women's obligation.
I have a
Sure.
question for you that's